You know that song, the one that played on the radio and you thought, ugh, turn it off. 3 weeks later, you're singing it in the shower. What happened? Your brain didn't change its mind about the song. It changed its mind about you hearing it. Psychologists call this the mere exposure effect. The more you're exposed to something, the more you tend to like it, even if your first reaction was no thanks. A psychologist named Robert Zajonc discovered this back in 1968. He ran people through made-up words, random faces, even nonsense symbols that don't exist in any language. Same result every time. Show people something enough times, and liking creeps up, almost on its own. Here's the fun part. People in these studies weren't trying to like the stimulus more. A lot of them couldn't even consciously remember seeing it before. The liking happened anyway, quietly, under the radar. Why would your brain do that? The leading explanation is something psychologists call processing fluency. The more familiar something is, the easier your brain can process it. And easy to process gets quietly mislabeled by your brain as good. There's actually a deeper, older reason this shortcut exists. Zajonc's own theory was evolutionary. Something brand new could be dangerous, so your brain's default reaction to novelty is a little caution, a little wariness. But every time you encounter the same thing again and nothing bad happens, that wariness drops a notch. Eventually, I've survived this 100 times quietly turns into I like this. Familiar isn't just easy. For most of human history, familiar meant safe. This isn't a one-off finding, either. Researchers reviewed over 200 separate studies on it, and the pattern held up again and again, across words, faces, sounds, even brand logos. But, and I have to be honest with you here, it's not unlimited. Play a song too many times, and the same effect that made you love it starts working backwards. Familiarity turns into fatigue, and fatigue turns into please, never again. Researchers call this an inverted U. Liking goes up, peaks, and then comes back down if the repetition doesn't stop. That's the actual reason Song of the Summer burns out by September. Simple, catchy stimuli, like a 3-minute pop song, tend to peak and crash faster. More complex stimuli, like a piece of classical music or a painting, can take far more exposures before that boredom kicks in. Here's where it gets a little unsettling. This effect doesn't just shape what you like. It shapes what you believe. Psychologists call it the illusory truth effect, and it was first documented back in 1977. Researchers read people a list of trivia statements, some true, some completely false, spread out across several weeks. The statements people had heard more than once, even the false ones, got rated as more believable just for being familiar. Not because anyone checked the facts, just because it sounded familiar, and familiar feels true. That's the same fluency shortcut from a minute ago, just pointed at beliefs instead of preferences. It's a big part of why a rumor, a slogan, or a piece of misinformation can feel true, purely from being repeated enough times, regardless of whether it actually is. And it's not just music or beliefs. It's people, too. In one classic experiment, women were placed in a row of lab cubicles and walked past each other varying numbers of times while testing different solutions, some pleasant, some genuinely unpleasant to taste. The women who crossed paths more often ended up liking each other more, even in the unpleasant condition. Just showing up near someone repeatedly, with nothing else going for it, nudged people toward liking them. Which is probably why it's the coworker you barely noticed in week 1 who somehow becomes a friend by week 12. It's the brand logo you've seen 1,000 times that just feels more trustworthy than one you've never seen. It's the stranger at your gym who goes from random person to, oh, I know that guy, purely from being in the same room enough times. So if you want someone to like you more, the science says, don't try to be unforgettable in one big moment. Just show up. Consistently, in small, low-pressure doses. Let your brain, and theirs, do the rest, quietly, in the background. Just don't overdo it. The same exposure that builds liking can tip into annoyance if you push it too far. The sweet spot is steady, not constant. And maybe the more useful habit is this. The next time something or someone feels obviously true or obviously likable at first glance, it's worth a second of asking whether that feeling is actually earned or whether you've just seen it a lot. If this explained a song, a person, or a belief you couldn't quite figure out why you held, that's the whole point of this channel. Subscribe to Inklings, big questions drawn simply, and I'll see you in the next one.